But tonight I wanted to, what's her name, Crystal? Crystal. Crystal was asking about concentration practice, samadhi, or what is called jhana. So and it's actually been a long time since I talked about jhana and the practice, that type of meditation practice. And maybe some of you that are, maybe some of you forgot everything about jhana, or want to refresh yourself, or maybe haven't even heard about jhana. There was a time when I've written a couple of books, and I was going to write another book about jhana, but it never came through. It never followed through. And one of the primary reasons is because there's not a lot of new stuff to talk about when it comes to that practice of concentration, the practice of jhana, because it is really a solitary practice. It's the kind of thing that a person has to do on their own. So you can give all of the details, all of the information about jhana. You can tell people how to do it, and then from there it's just like, go do it. Or if you've experienced some of these states of concentration, knowing about them can be advantageous as well. It can really help knowing what's going on if you've experienced something like that, and have any questions about it. So we'll talk a little bit about jhana, and then we'll do a meditation based on it, and I'll kind of I'll guide us a little bit in that meditation. But the idea with jhana, or this concentration practice, is that it is really a silent practice. I mean, it's not the kind of practice where you could guide somebody. But I usually do so much guiding here that I feel like I almost have to do at least a little bit of guiding. So when we do the meditation, I'll probably do like 5 minutes of guiding, and then the rest will be silence, which is really the nature of this concentration-based practice called jhana. But first of all, a little bit of background about jhana and how it compares to the other forms of meditation. And there's lots of different ways to practice meditation. In Theravada Buddhism, which is Theravada is translated as the teaching of the elder, or the older teachings. And the reason they call it Theravada is because it's from the Pali Canon and these teachings directly from the Buddha himself. And the two types of meditation that he talked about were, he kind of had different names for them, and they got translated a little bit differently. But basically, it's Vipassana and jhana practices. Vipassana, or what is called insight meditation, is a mindfulness-based practice. And when we're doing that kind of practice, we focus on an object, and our mind will focus on it as much as it can. We're not really relying on a lot of, we're not really relying on concentration and keeping the mind chained down. In other words, like, that we want it to be placed someplace, and if it moves from there, shame on you, that kind of thing. It's not that kind of practice. Vipassana, or insight meditation, understands that the mind will wander off, but that's part of the practice. And if the mind wanders off to something like an attachment, something that we are drawn to, and it goes to the same place again and again and again, or that we notice that worry comes up, or anger comes up, or any kind of any negativity of mind that comes up in a habitual way, those things we want to notice, and then we can work with them through the meditation practice. Not intentionally work on them, but the meditation practice itself allows us to have this awareness of what's happening, so that it can be basically fixed through the practice. And especially when we break, the Buddha broke everything down to the aspect of the body and how meditation affects the body. He also looked at feelings, this pleasantness or unpleasantness, the things that draw us towards something or that repels us away. Basically, that's it. We're drawn towards something or we're pushed away from something. But it sounds simple, and it is, but it dictates who and what we are in life. These likes and dislikes are very, very strong for us, especially for us humans. But it's a factor in all beings, all animals, and everything. And then mind states, which is the operation of the mind and how the mind has these moods and these motions that are really kind of spell out our emotions. How we live with these emotions and how our emotions affect us. And we know that emotions come up in our meditation practice. It's a big part of Vipassana, insight practice. And then also there's the aspect of the Dharma, or the mind objects, or we could look at them as either insights that we have or teachings, like the teachings of the Buddha. And the reason that they could be considered the teachings of the Buddha is because the Buddha taught from his insights that he gained through the practice of meditation and through his life experiences as well. And so we can learn from the teachings of the Buddha through his insights, or we can learn, basically, the Buddha said, we're going to learn the same thing if we diligently practice and learn from our own insights. He said it'll be the same. We're all looking for the truth and trying to learn from the truth. And the Buddha's truth is the same as our truth. There's no difference. And so, again, the teachings and the meditation is broken up into these 4 areas, and that's what really makes it a mindfulness-based practice. This is Vipassana, or insight meditation. Very, very common practice, and we do it here all the time, through the center. I teach it all the time, and we focus on the breath, and we bring our awareness together and a little bit of concentration on the breath, and then we work with it from there. In that, there could be some guiding. I don't think the Buddha did any guiding, but we do some guiding depending on what aspect and what we're kind of working with in that practice. As you've heard me do here on Wednesday nights. Now, Jhana, before I say anything about Jhana, I have to say, if you're interested in Jhana at all, by far the best book, and I don't get any proceeds from saying this, but it's from one of my teachers, Bhante Gudaransana, the book Beyond Mindfulness in Plain English is the very, very best book that explains Jhana. And it's the kind of book that you can read 10 times and still keep on the bookshelf and go back to it to find these answers, that you might be looking for. But since I got the whole book memorized word by word, I'm going to spell it all out for you right now. Kind of. It's a very simple practice, but there's a lot to it. In Jhana, we want to how it differs, let me back up. How it differs from Vipassana is that we don't care about the worldly objects. We don't care about the body, the feelings, the mind states, the mind objects, or the dharmas. We don't care about any of that. All we care about is bringing our mind to single-pointedness. And that single-pointedness is finding a meditation object and bringing our attention there. And by basically whatever means it takes. But generally, it is by sheer willpower that we keep it there, and a lot of practice. I didn't start experiencing jhana until I started meditating 3 hours a day. And I know that's fairly common when you talk about people that have experienced jhana or these deep states, that it takes a lot of practice, a lot of time. That doesn't mean that you can't get a taste of it. And we all, or a lot of us probably have got a taste of it. We can go into these deep states, and we don't even actually have to be meditating to do it, but there is not a lot of control. We don't have the control to do it whenever we want. I'm gonna, control would be like, I have an hour to meditate, and I'm going to go into jhana, that we just make up our mind that we're going to go into jhana, or that we probably will be able to go into jhana, depending on what's going on. And what I mean by what's going on is if there's any negativity in the mind at all, even fatigue, if we're worried about something, if we have, we can feel an attachment, like a desire for something. If there's any kind of anger that has been happening, we won't go into jhana. We won't be able to do it. All that stuff, all the worldly concerns, all the concerns I mentioned, the body, feelings, mind states, mind objects, and the world out there, can't interfere with the practice. And it's for that reason that jhana shows us that all of our problems, all of our difficulties, every negativity of mind is brought upon willingly by us from the untrained mind. Because when we're in jhana, there is none of that. There is no negativity. And consequently, there really isn't any bodily sensations. And there's a lot of energy. And it gives us an example. It really shows us that there's a different world out there from the world that we're experiencing. And quite possibly, it's the world beyond this life that is actually being experienced. That's what it feels like. And there's 8 levels of jhana. Jhana 1, jhana 2, jhana 3, jhana 4, and then the next 4 levels have actual names to them. But when a person goes into the first jhana, it is such a stark difference from everyday experience that a lot of people feel like, well, this is it. I'm awake. I've become enlightened. This is my big opportunity. Thank you. For allowing this to happen. And then, but they're sadly mistaken, because I've never met anybody that went into the first jhana and realized that was enlightenment, or certainly not full enlightenment. It might seem like it because of the freedom and the spaciousness that it provides. So it's like if we can all imagine that we're deeply, deeply concentrated on something, and there is no suffering, there's no difficulties, there's no negativity, there's no negative emotion at all. There's no desire, no fear, no anger, no restlessness, no worry, and everything is great. But if you, in jhana, that is expanded, and it expanded for such a long time that you realize that it's not normal, and that something special is happening. Now, so the meditation objects are generally the same, and that's where the confusion comes in. Like somebody will, will be practicing meditation for years after year, and then we decide to practice jhana, and it doesn't necessarily feel that much different. The because of the meditation object might be the same. It could be the breath, or it could be what is called a nimitta, which is a sign when the eyes are closed, like a color or a light that we see. You know, it's a sign within the mind, and that would, if that is visible by a meditator, that could be an indication that you can drop the breath, the meditation object, the breath, and use that nimitta as your meditation object. And there's also other objects. There's these kasinas, these colored discs that used to be used, it was used to be quite common. You know, a couple of thousand years ago, these colored discs, when they didn't have, you know, they couldn't go to Home Depot and pick out the different colors of paint that they want to use. They would make a disc or a circle out of certain earth tones, you know, like a brown, like from a brown tree, or a green, or a yellow. You know, they would find different materials and create a paste, you know, to make their own paint, and they would paint these circles. And they would focus on the circle with their eyes open and get such a good picture of that within their mind's eye that they would close their eyes and they could still see that circle. They could still see it, just as if their eyes were open. And it takes a fair amount of practice. But whenever they would practice jhana, it came to the point where if a person does that practice, they can close your eye, you can close your eyes and you can see that circle, whether it's yellow or green or brown or whatever it might be, or some of them are maroon or like a reddish color. And supposedly these different colors were kind of what that person was drawn to for whatever reason. And you would talk to the teacher, and the teacher said, you should work with this maroon kasina or something like that. Now this isn't quite as common as it used to be, I don't think, but if you went on a retreat in Burma, for example, you would probably run into something like this, where they do more jhana retreats than other retreats. At least they used to anyway. I'm not sure how it is now. So the meditation object for us could be the same. We could use the breath. And there's 4 levels, or actually three levels before we get into jhana, just to kind of give you an idea how this works. And we could use a simile of a bee, you know, on a flower. Like if these are levels of concentration that, if you think of them and kind of get an idea of them, it might help. And the first level is momentary concentration, and that's what most of us are probably meditating in now. Momentary concentration is like a bee that notices a flower and you know, maybe knows that there's some nectar in there that it can use, and it comes over by the flower and kind of checks it out and just kind of hoovers around it, and might even touch it or land on it just for a moment, and then flies off, or just kind of checking it out. Momentary, that's momentary concentration. And we could look at that as like everyday concentration for a meditator, perhaps. The next area is called access concentration, and just like the word says, it provides access to these deeper states. For the bee, our little bee, it would be like him landing on that flower and really, you know, starting to really understand that what is happening within that flower. There's nectar there, and there's something that could be useful, and the bee is no longer flapping his wings. He's just kind of chilled, just checking things out. He's like, this is the access point to this flower. And for us meditators, it would be the access to this deeper concentration. So in other words, we feel like any negativity, any hindrances we have are starting to fall away. We don't notice them. There's no any sounds that we might hear or discomfort in the body. It's not really bothering us. We're feeling pretty good, and we feel as if our concentration, that if we put our concentration on something, it would probably stay there. And we can actually work in that area for a long time. I know people that have been in that, kind of worked in that access concentration for like 6 months or more. And the main thing is not to be frustrated, to really know that you're getting someplace. And then the third area is absorption. That's when that bee is on that flower, and he's got his little beak right in the flower, and he's drawing that nectar out. Is it called a beak? Somebody help me out.
I have no idea what it's called.
It's a
proboscis? Sure.
Yeah, it starts with a P.
Proboscis.
Proboscis.
Yeah.
Yeah, he takes his proboscis. Or she takes the proboscis. They both have a proboscis. And and the bee sticks it into the flower and draws the nectar out. And it's like, it's one with that flower. Like, this is very, very important for that bee. That flower, which is our meditation object, and the bee are one. And when we are in access as a meditator, or not access, I'm sorry, absorption, that is the first, that is jhana. That's when we first get into jhana. And absorption is when we become one with our meditation object, whatever it might be. So there's any kind of, any sound, there would be no sounds, there would be no sensations in the body. There would be no daydreaming. There would be no negativity. There would be nobody sitting with you. There wouldn't be any of that. And it would be like, kind of like falling into a completely different world. If you can imagine, and when a person goes into jhana, they usually describe it as falling in. Almost always it feels like they fell in to jhana, fell into this deeper concentration. And jhana is just simply a word. It's a Pali word, and Sanskrit too, that means concentration, basically. So for a person to, sometimes a person can experience this. I've had a number of people send me emails and they try to explain it to me and ask what it's about. And it is some type of jhana, some kind of a deep concentration, and it seems very, very foreign. But a person can just do it and fall into it. But if you want to be able to do it again and again and again, which is really the whole thing behind it, you want to almost like mimic how it happened the first time. So if it happens the first time, or if you notice that access concentration has come up and you feel like everything is working for you, and then access and then absorption, you want to kind of map out everything that you did, even things what you ate or what you didn't eat, the room, maybe even the temperature, everything, the cushion, maybe what you were wearing, how the day went, what did you do like a couple hours before you sat into meditation, all these different things, so that you can mimic the situation for yourself. So when you sit down, you can go into jhana again and again and again. After a while, when you do it again and again and again, you don't have to have all this preparation. You don't have to prepare, and it just becomes more and more easier, because it's accepted within the mind and the body, that jhana is something that you do. And when that happens, there's some very fine nuances that come about by when you first go into jhana, there's a great deal of joy and happiness. But that joy and happiness is very energetic, and so when that falls away, then you can go into even a deeper type of concentration, which is usually called the second level of jhana. And that's basically it in a nutshell. But you can go into the third level of jhana and the fourth level of jhana. And these things generally take quite a bit of practice, and you can go through these jhanas and then come back out again if you really stay with the practice. What we're worried, or for most of us, we're concerned about getting into the first jhana and being able to control that, being able to use that through control. So I just kind of touched on everything that the available information that might help us out in jhana. We can't expect to close our eyes and go into jhana right now. I don't want to say it's not going to happen, but if we anticipate or have this expectation to go into jhana, that's enough of a desire to keep us out of jhana. And desire, what's behind that desire is I want to have this experience. I deserve this experience. I've been meditating a long time. I want to have this, or this kind of thing. So it's just the ego or the self that's getting in the way, that can get in the way of us experiencing jhana. So we don't want to have any expectations. We want to enjoy our practice. We want to have energy. We don't want to be, basically, we can't be interfered by the world, by anything that's going on within the mind or the body. And a really good practice, if you catch the mind wandering away from the breath, is to probably count the breaths. That's what I did. I counted the breath. I would count the breath for an hour or more. And it helped. It really helped train the mind to stay with the breath. And so, and that's just kind of a personal thing that I did. I went back to the basics, to counting the breath, and then worked on it from there, and then lengthened the meditation time, that kind of thing. Which reminds me, we better get to meditating here, otherwise we'll never get close to jhana without the practice. So please make yourself comfortable. And as mentioned, I will guide us through a little bit of this, but meditation is a solitary practice. It's something that we do on our own and in silence. Silence is very, very important, and it's very, very powerful in meditation. And this is the type of practice that really proves that and gets that message across. Closing the eyes. Take a couple of nice deep breaths. You want to have the body as comfortable as possible, but simply so that we don't have to come back to it mentally and adjust it. And the more comfortable and pliable the body is, the less pain there will be, the less discomfort. And we'll be able to sit for a good hour or more and come out of it without any stiffness at all within the body. Jhana can be controlled to the extent that we can tell ourselves that if we're capable of going into jhana regularly, we can tell ourselves that I'm going to go into jhana for 45 minutes or 47 minutes or whatever it might be, and we will go into jhana and then come out exactly at that time. Because it's our true nature, it's who we are, and we have an inner clock that is very powerful, and there's many other areas that are just as powerful that we can learn about through jhana. Primarily that what was spoken before, that we create all of our suffering. And we can erase all negativity in the moment. Just through concentration. So if you're bringing your attention to the breath, please do so, and notice where you feel the breath the most. And when you really, really connect with the breath, there's a oneness, and that it would actually be an indication that you could be getting very close to jhana. That single pointedness is that what is called absorption, and it's called absorption because you are one, and almost being absorbed into the meditation object, or the meditation object is being absorbed into you. That's why it's called absorption. And if the mind is having difficulty staying with the breath, you can count the breaths. Using the inhalation and the exhalation as one complete round of breathing, one complete breath, and placing a number someplace within the breath as you breathe in or as you exhale. Sometimes even the counting becomes so familiar that we might want to count backwards. Maybe count up to 100 and then count backwards from 100, or even start with 100 and count backwards, just to keep the mind more active. Another method is to just remind ourselves to breathe in and breathe out again and again. Breathing in, breathing out. But for deep concentration, we want no concerns about the world, no concerns about the body or the mind. We're only looking at what we're doing in the immediate present moment, which is focusing on that point where we feel the breath, or the number that we're putting on that breath, some aspect of the breathing. Or if there's a sign within the mind, we can be using that, the nimitter. We never want to create a sign, but if one appears, we can use that in many cases. With your attention on the breath, just take a little deeper than normal inhalation. Bring some energy into the body, if it's not already there. Take a few nice deep breaths of air. Just kind of bringing ourselves back to the room. Put your hands together in front of you if you like. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or difficulties that we might face.